buckle up?
Sure.
As a Marine, I think they'll listen to you. Hoorah. Jimmy, tell a white lie. Tell them we already started. Okay, welcome back, everybody.
It's an honest program.
If there's anybody that is a panelist and is doing a presentation, I'll just announce it again that, Matt is our tech from Ryder. He's up in the booth. And Art is running the show from regards of City of Angels and the Red Forum. So if you need PowerPoint, so on and so forth, make sure you see those guys. So let's see what we have in front of us. It's about 20 of. You guys did a great job getting back by 11:30. Okay, so we have our panel on Narcan, reversal intervention programs. And that's all that stands between us and lunch. And lunch will be back in the big hall. So we've heard a lot about Narcan. I've had people, I've had media, say, what do you think about Narcan? And because some people are down on it. Some people say that, it's just an egg loan. We're Narcan the same people 3, 4, 5 times. And from my perspective, I say, well, Narcan is life-saving, right? But if you look at Narcan, if you look at the timeline of someone who has a substance use disorder, Narcan is at the end of the timeline where they're dead. We have soldiers dying on the battlefield because the peace process failed. So we have to figure a way to address this epidemic up on the front end, so Narcan is used less and less. But right now, as you'll hear, Narcan is doing a wonderful service. And I've said in many instances, we use the word junkie, pill popper, addict, words that we have to get out of our language. And some people, and we've heard it from our panels, some people still feel pretty strongly about that. And so what I say is that if you don't have any sympathy for that kid lying on the floor, and as a father who tried to administer CPR to his son who was dead from an overdose, if you can't have compassion for that kid laying on the floor, I want you to think about our police officers who respond to the scene. Because when we did our first Red, after Narcan was introduced and police officers started carrying it, we had our Lawrence police officers who had the first Narcan saves in Mercer County come up and tell their story. And they were able to go home that night and feel good because they gave a child back to a family. So if you can't have sympathy for that kid laying on the floor, think about our police officers who respond to all these scenes and have to go back at night to their 12, 13, 17, 19, 21-year-old kids. Narcan has given them the ability to go back to their families and feel good, rather than going back, which our police officers do all the time, as they take their job with them. So if you can't have sympathy for that kid laying on the floor, have some sympathy for our men and women in blue who are saving lives every day. So with that, we have our panel, which is set up for roughly an hour, minus a few minutes. What we'll try to do is what we did in the other panel. We'll start with, I call him Mr. 300, Prosecutor Joe Coronado from Ocean County, because of the battle that he's fighting down there at Ground Zero. So panel, what I'll ask you to do is take a few minutes to introduce yourselves. Your panel is on Narcan and the programs that are in our hospitals. You can touch on that. And then depending on how much time after the information you give, we'll see if we can open it up to the audience for questions. So, Mr. Prosecutor, thank you for coming, and it's all yours.
Thank you, Kevin. Again, my name is Joe Coronado. I became the prosecutor in Ocean County in March of 2013. And as I tell my story is that after being there, I guess a little over a week, we had 8 overdose deaths in 7 days, all under the age of 28. I had one young girl who was 18 years old who died in Brick, young blonde girl who was doing 50 packs of heroin a day, 25 in the morning and 25 at night. She died in a motel room. And I said to myself as a dad, you know, what did I get myself into? When I went back and checked in 2012, we had 56 overdose deaths in Ocean County. By the end of 2013, we had 112. When it got to be, obviously, September and October, I was panicking because I said, oh my God, I've got all these deaths and I've got to stop the bleeding, I've got to stop the death that's taking place. My chief, Glenn Miller, and I, we checked, went onto the web, looked at all different things, and we came up with Narcan, which is naloxone. And we made the determination that we were going to turn it out in Ocean County and that we were going to use it. Let me explain a little bit about Narcan because the term is thrown out there. Narcan is also naloxone, it's a generic. Okay, and how it works is that the opiates, whether it's Percocet, Oxycontin, heroin, morphine, fentanyl, it attaches to the neuroreceptors of the brain. Narcan or narmoxone has a stronger bond. So as soon as if the opiate is into the brain and it's telling the brain and telling the body to shut down and it's going into an overdose, if you inject or if you get Narcan or naloxone into the body, it races up to the neuroreceptors, has a stronger bond, knocks the opiate off the neuroreceptors, and that's what changes. So it's not hitting the heart, it's not anything else, it's just that the chemical, the naloxone has a stronger bond. So that's how it works. We knew that we couldn't use an injectable, we had to use a spray. We went back and then we found out that, you know, I can only get the spray from one distributor, I can get the syringe or the delivery system from another, the nozzle had to come from a different distributor. So we're in the basement of the prosecutor's office putting these kits together. We were very blessed to have Ken Laval, who was a doctor, who was going to help us with the training and put all our protocols. So we put everything all together, had a little fight with the Department of Health, and sooner or later we were the pilot program for the state. We did launch it. All the police chiefs in my county, all 33, stood by my side, shoulder to shoulder, said that they would do it. And we launched it on April, the first time that we used it in Ocean County was April 6th. Unfortunately, the numbers went down, I guess. Fortunately, the numbers went down in 2014. It went down to 108. Last year in 2015, the number went up to 118. As of 2016, we had 195 deaths so far this year, or in 2016 in Ocean County, and I've got between 10 or 15 that possibly will be called based on the toxicology report. So you can see from 2015, to 2016, that we went from 118 to what I'm thinking is going to be around 203, 204. My prediction is that unfortunately we will probably be in the 300 range this year in 2017. Question is why, and it's because of fentanyl. It's synthetic, it's more powerful, it's more devastating, it's just killing our people. What you need to understand that, we had 100, and we have, like I said, 105, or possibly maybe 203, 204, somewhere in there, but we had 550 sprays by law enforcement. So we had the most sprays, the most deaths, and I think that we're at the beginning of this journey, not anywhere near the end of the journey. Narcan's important, but it's like a mass shooting, meaning that we've saved a life, but we've not solved the problem. So you have to understand, even when I went down to Washington and I spoke to the Attorney General from the United States about it, that, my opinion is that Narcan's extremely important because we need to save the life, but it's important that we break the cycle of addiction. So I'm very proud that we've started Narcan 2, or the ORC program. We're probably the first state in the country to do this. Okay, RJW Barnabas system has done a program with funding from the health department, in which we now have recovery coaches that when somebody by law enforcement gets sprayed and brought to the hospital, that there's a recovery coach that's going to meet them at the emergency room, that's going to take them, when I say, as I call it, the teardrops are warm, and that we're going to convince them, because giving them a slip of paper is just not going to cut it. By telling them that they have a problem, we need to, as I call it, capture them at that moment and get them into treatment. The rates are tremendous so far. We've been successful, and we need to now track these people as they go into detox, as they need to go into treatment, and hopefully get them into the recovery phase. This is the disease, and we can't believe that by putting somebody in for either 10 days or 15 days or 30 days and then saying you're done is the way to handle it. That's absurd, that's ridiculous, and that's not what we need to do. The recovery coaches is like a bonding, it's like something where we have to have that mentoring system, because unless you have that mentoring system, that one-on-one system, that follow-up, by doing it with a telephone call just is not going to cut it, it's just not going to work, and you're going to end up with another dead body. So I think that Narcan is evolving, it's developing. I mean, I can tell you this, back in 2014 when we first started, we were talking about a little a syringe that had a nasal spray, it had 2 milligrams of it. Today it's a nasal spray, it's a unit all put together, it has 4 milligrams, it's more powerful, less water, it's more intense. If you really take a look at just the delivery system that has happened in the last 18 months, it's so much better. You don't have to put it all together. We are certainly changing the landscape as we go through, but despite all that, the synthetic storm is really killing everybody. It cuts across all races, cuts across all creeds, cuts across all economic situations. I'm going to tell you that we need to understand that law enforcement by itself is not going to get us out of this problem. And we need to make sure that we partnership up with the healthcare community and the educational community if we're going to try to make a difference in somebody's life. The other thing I wanted to mention is that it became apparent to me that the only time they were getting people into treatment is when they were overdosing as they just walked into the light. And I'm saying, well, you know, that doesn't really make too much sense. What about everybody else? So that's why I think that drug court's important, because that's a way in which we divert them through the system. We now have a PIC calendar, and because of bail reform, I do think that we now can divert people when they first get charged or when they first come in with simple possession, with the idea of, instead of putting them through the system, is then getting them into a treatment program and trying to help them with the idea of maybe possibly dismissing the charges against them. And I'm also pleased to say that starting January 11th in Ocean County, we're going to have the HEART program, which is the Heroin Addiction Recovery Program, in which you don't have to now be charged and you don't have to be overdosed. You can go to a police station and we're going to get you into a program, and you're not going to have to pay for it. So the bottom line is starting January 11th, but the one thing I'm going to talk about my programs, and one thing I'm going to talk about healthcare, is that I'm going to partner up with you, but I'm also going to be checking on outcomes. I'm just not going to put anybody into a program and say you've been in there for 2 weeks, 3 weeks, or 5 weeks and say, wait a minute, your problem's solved. That's ridiculous. I want to come in and find out how you're following up on these people. I want to find out your outcomes. I'm going to hold the programs accountable. I understand that we're dealing with human beings, and I understand that not every human being is the same, and that you have to treat them maybe a little bit differently, but there needs to be a standard. We need to have a standard so we can find out what we're doing and how we're doing, because otherwise the numbers, not only in Ocean County, but out the state of New Jersey, are just going to continue to escalate unbelievably. So that's pretty much all I have to say.
Ditto. My name is Danielle LaRusso. I'm a sergeant over at the Welch County Prosecutor's Office. I have 23 years working undercover narcotics. I obviously considered an expert in my field, but I'm more of an expert because I spent 34 years loving somebody who suffered from addiction. And it's not something as a police officer that I shared with everybody or turned around and told my colleagues that, oh yeah, I know, because that's like my brother. I didn't do any of that stuff. When I was 11 years old is the first time I saw a drug overdose. It wasn't when I was in uniform, it was when I was a kid. I started getting into the field of educating kids and going to the schools and talking. And through that, I was very fortunate enough to meet Michelle Perez with the City of Angels, and she's also a recovery coach and a trainer. And I gave her my ideas of what I wanted to do in the schools, and she went over and beyond to get me into the schools. Everything we do is obviously free, has no money associated with it at all. It's a monthly training in the schools. It goes from kindergarten all the way up to high school. We do peer-to-peers where we actually bring people from the schools or from those towns into the schools, and they talk to the kids, and it really hits home because the kids are talking with and listening to family members that they know, or family of other students that they know from their town. And when we started the program, the SACs in the schools were telling us that 3 kids on average would come into the schools for assistance. They would go to the SAC, ask for help, or for a family member. After the first year that we did this, we had 18 kids, 18 families go to the SAC and ask for assistance, which is huge. It's huge, which is something that you don't see every day. You don't just see a lot of kids or a lot of families having these open conversations about addiction. One of my biggest things was, instead of just talking about addiction, instead of just talking about using drugs and don't use drugs and all this, let's talk about what addiction is, because everybody thinks you just go away to Florida and it's rainbows and glitter all over again. They don't know what drug overdoses are. They don't know that addiction and recovery is a lifetime thing. It's not something that you just get better and you're okay. So we're really hitting the schools. We're really doing the prevention part. Michelle comes to me right after Coronado had put everything in place with the Narcan, and she said, I want to do this also in Gloucester County. She said, I want to talk to every officer. I want to talk to everybody. I want to have Narcan available for anybody that needs it. And within 6 months, we had gotten into the hospitals, and we were talking to them, and we were saying, this is what we want to do. And there's a grant out there that can fund the recovery coaches in the hospitals, but not everybody has the grant. And we didn't want to wait for that, so we just decided to do a volunteer base. And we have about 40 recovery coaches, which I'll let Michelle talk about the recovery coaches that we have. But we were able to put the recovery coaches immediately into the hospital. So within an hour of somebody coming in of a drug overdose, not even that. If you come in and you just say, I just need help, the nurses or doctor will call a recovery coach, and they have an hour response time to come into the hospital and to offer assistance. It doesn't have to be opiates. It's just any addiction that you have. They'll be able to give you the resources and the help you need to get in recovery. We took it not just in the hospitals, then we took it out to all the police departments, and all the police departments have palm cards, and they have Michelle and this guy Ed who pretty much help us throughout the entire county with the recovery coaches. So if anybody comes into contact in a positive or a negative way with law enforcement, the officers can give this information out to the families, so the families can get help and or get somebody into treatment. So far it's been very, it's been a hard road. I mean, it sounds easy because everything's free. Why would you say no to a program that's completely free? But it actually has been a kind of a hard road because there's been a lot of obstacles they're throwing at us, because people, I don't want to say this in a bad way, but people look at addiction. I don't like saying it, but a lot of people look at addiction as that dirty word. And that's been our biggest barrier, is that stigma, and some things that I've been throwing out to the people we've been dealing with. The hospital, if they have a somebody comes in with domestic violence, our senior nurses are called, and then we have volunteers that come in with domestic violence, and they talk to the people that need assistance to get them help with the abuse. That's how you need to start looking at addiction, the same thing with the recovery coaches. You need to look at it the same way, not at, oh, we're having these volunteers come into our hospitals to offer these assistance. No, we need to look at it like it doesn't matter if you're a victim that's getting beat up on a daily basis, or if you're a person that's addicted to drugs. You're still a victim. You're a victim to those drugs. And these are not, we all know addiction, it's not, people choose to do it and want to do it. It has a hold on them, and they can't stop, and that is they're being abused by the drugs, basically. We want people to look at it that way. So we are running into some obstacles, some, nothing too bad. We have a lot of officers that call us and ask for, to get people help that they've come into contact with. Just getting it out there and talking more about it and just getting that stigma to go out the window would really be helpful. The other side of it is educating our officers in Gloucester County on addiction, because everybody just assumes that police officers understand addiction and know it, and that's not the case. You know, not everybody's like me that grew up with it. You know, I didn't even understand it up until 2 years ago, to be honest with you, when I met Michelle. I hadn't spoken to my brother in years. I was more compassionate to people that I dealt with on the streets than I was with my own flesh and blood. It wasn't until I listened to all these speakers and these kids talking about losing somebody that they loved, and I thought to myself, wow, the last time I looked at my brother, I looked at him with disgust in my eyes. I looked at him like he wasn't even worth my time, and I treated him worse than I would treat anybody, because I was so kind to people that I met on the street, and I thought, wow, I really do love this guy. I may not like what he's doing, but let me just offer him the help that I'm offering to strangers that I don't even know. And he's been clean now 8 months. He is new. And just got his business cards. He's now a recovery coach. Obviously, he's not. He's still learning. He's still in the process. But he went and became a recovery coach. And he holds meetings in our town now to help young kids and people in need. He's doing phenomenal. But not every officer understands it, and I want to do that. There's another gentleman from West Deptford who's very passionate about it in Gloucester County, and he wants to just educate all the officers like I do, and that's like the next step for us in Gloucester County, of getting Michelle out there to educate the officers on addiction.
Hi, how are you? All right, so, all right. I am a mother who's in long-term recovery from codependency. It's not just the individual who's struggling with the substance use disorder, but it's also the family along with them. And unless you understand a disease, you know, it's just, we need to get into treatment also. We need to get into meetings, you need to talk to people. I know this is the Narcan reversal program, but Danielle already touched on the opiate initiative, and that was like huge for us, because a 500% increase in students to go and reach out for help, that is like ginormous. It doesn't even sound like it's real, but it's real. I actually did a couple of the workshops myself, and it's period after period after period, all 9 periods. So bring your water because you got dry mouth by 4th period, and you're just trying to get through. But halfway through one class, when the students start doing a peer-to-peer themselves, I just backed off, because my job was done. Because what we're doing is we're changing what the norm is. What is normalcy? Where is comfort? Because there is no comfort when it comes to addiction. There is no, oh yeah, well, I just, you know, did a bag and you think you do something. That's not like that. Like, they clam. It's shame. But this program has changed the norms for these kids. Our local police department, we just did a lockdown. They totally locked down the school, every kid and student in the classroom, brought in like 10 canines, ran through the whole school, you know, all in conjunction with the opiate initiative. It's collaboration. It's not me, it's not you or you. No one's making money, no one's gonna get famous. We have to work together. Our entire township, in Monroe Township, in Gloucester County, TJ, Greg, Ed, I mean, I can go on and name everybody. I wanted to save the world. We don't know, I can't do that, right? So I just started in my town. Going back with the Narcan, when it happened, I found out that our son was using heroin. Like, here I am, 6-figure pharmaceutical executive, right? Mom doing heroin. What? Like, I was so stupid. I was so naive. I had no idea. I was codependent. I was blinded. We didn't know what to do. We didn't know where to go. My husband got a phone book out. All right, we're talking about beepers. Who was that, Phil? You got a beeper? Phone book. right? We called Narnon from the state, and Bill G said to call the City of Angels and talk to this guy Redneck. And I was like, oh, where are you sending me? That's how I met the City of Angels. And I learned a lot from them. Getting involved as a mom, I learned to fix it. So I went to every class. I got every certification, every seminar. I drive anywhere by myself. Like, I drove my husband nuts. I'm surprised I'm still married. I mean, it was just insane because you wanted to find that one little line that said how to fix it. Well, I realized I wasn't going to find the little line. But during this process, I realized all the barriers and everything that's wrong and the silos. You know, like, it's horrible. Joined the Municipal Alliance, became a recovery coach, working with CCAR, recovery coach professional, recovery coach trainer, interventionist. I'm a mom. There's nothing fancy about any of that, really. And when it comes down to working with Narcan programs in the hospitals, what people seem to forget is when, Joe, it's the connection, right? So, you're gonna go in there with a white lab coat, you ain't gonna make no connection with that person. There's nothing clinical about a recovery coach. A recovery coach is something that you feel. You don't learn it. You experience it. You empathize with it. And the recovery coaches, I mean, it's like a family all over the state. Down in Gloucester County, it's like all across, what are we, Gloucester and Atlantic, all across there, the classes that we've been holding with these recovery coaches, everybody still collaborates. You can put one thing out there and everybody's responding. Everybody is right there. And that is the support we have within our own team. And when we get to work with the families in the hospitals, it's just amazing. I had a call from Inspira last Wednesday for a young man and his family. He didn't come in because he was administering Narcan. They went in because he wanted help. He went to her on Christmas Eve and said, Mom, I want to go to treatment. I mean, like, what better Christmas present can you get, right? So they went in, hospital called, and it's like, you don't have to be administered Narcan to go to the hospital. People are just walking in, like my phone don't stop. I'm very tired today, so if I sound kind of groggy, it's because I am. But you know what? I'm going to keep on going. I'll power nap when I can. We do all of this volunteer. So we go in, my husband and I, we meet with this family. The young man goes away to treatment that night. And it's not just him, because the mom's there, there was one aunt and a friend, a family friend. You know, so I speak with them also. My husband, we did what we had to do. My husband's talking to the gentleman, and then I pull aside and I start working with the family, because the family was there together. I'm talking to her. She's educated about addiction. She understands it because she's living it. But she really needs to understand what addiction is, and she really needs to understand what she needs to do for her. So we do weekly meetings, you know, City of Angels or recovery meetings from CCAR. And we welcome any type of recovery, family, everything. We do them every Thursday. So I tell her, look, we do weekly meetings, and this was a Wednesday. Come on out to that meeting tomorrow. And she says, okay, I will. And you hear that a lot, okay, I will. You know, it's the next day and they don't show up. But we don't give up, we keep on reaching out. But she came. Like, my eyes lit up, I got so excited. Like, that's my reward. I don't get paid for any of this. I do all of this on a volunteer basis. That's what City of Angels does. We do it because we want to. We're not doing it because we're worried about how much money we're going to make. It's not a financial thing, it's a moral thing. Let's humanize this disease, okay? Let's really bring down everything when it comes to working with these individuals, whether they're in the hospital, whether it's coming from one of our police departments. I mean, in our police departments, like Danielle said, it's a process. We've had a lot of barriers. Oh, wait a minute, well, we need this, we need that. What do you need this for? It's not a clinical role. Give them our card, give them the brochure, do what you gotta do, have us call, we'll meet them outside, whatever. You know, it's making that connection, and they get it now. So it's a beautiful program, it's working out great. The police departments are amazing. like, I don't even, like, don't worry about my phone number being on a bathroom wall, because I think everybody in South Jersey has my phone number. They're handing out the brochures, that are the credit card, or not the credit cards, yeah, I wish I could. The palm card, and whether it's a police officer going in there to a call and, you know, for whatever situation that may be, and they realize that there's a substance issue within the family, they'll give them the brochure. We have another brochure also with this program that actually tells them how to get help, because, you know, unbeknownst to me, I didn't know what to do. So it's just a simplified brochure that says, it's the first step program. Step 1, 2, and 3. First, you gotta call the IME. You gotta call the IME. They gotta track it. So there's no way you are ever going to have 100% stats on this deal. Never. It's never gonna happen. Who's been Narcan? How many people are in recovery? Let's measure that one. That's another conversation. Don't get me started. All right, sorry, Kevin. I mean, the program itself, I mean, it's amazing. It's collaboration. That's what's making it successful from every level. It's just unbelievable. Like my town council and my mayor, like, I'm overwhelmed with the openness and the open-mindedness that they have to listen to just little old me. This is who I am, nobody. I'm just a mom. My son was a drug addict. We worked on it. I learned. I joined a municipal alliance. I walked out of my first meeting being vice chair. I am still the chair. Yeah, I know she's telling me to wrap it up. Time thing.
You gotta stay on it.
Yeah, gonna ceramic, but it's a great program. We need to do this, and we need to do this for the right reasons. It's humanizing, it's humbleizing. Let's remember, you know, we are meeting them where it's at. Let's meet the situation where it's at, because that's what recovery coaches do. Stay in our lane. I'm not the doctor, I'm not the cop, I'm not the judge. I'm a recovery coach. And that's what I do. It's all yours, Russ.
You know, sometimes how you're driving, you change lanes, because you think you're gonna kind of get ahead, and it kind of doesn't work out. I think I picked the wrong seat. Because these guys have done an amazing job, both passionately and information-wise, giving you information. So my name is Russ Mickley. I'm the Vice President of Ambulatory Services at Kennedy Hospital. Kennedy has 3 locations down in South Jersey, 2 in Camden County and 1 in Burlington County. I've been working in the mental health and substance use field in Jersey for a little over 30 years, which often leads people to question my own mental health. And so I've got some of the scars, as many as you have. So from the hospital perspective, I certainly can't add to what has already been discussed, but we kind of are on the receiving end of all of this. So when somebody comes in Narcan, obviously we're looking for ways to collaborate with what's going on in the community. And Danielle brought up an important point and regarding how we interface. You know, you say the shortest distance between 2 points is a straight line. What somebody probably doesn't tell you is how many times you have to stop and start and what obstacles you're going to encounter in that straight line. So what makes perfect sense from one perspective, sometimes we just can't get there from here in what we anticipated to be the normal time on the normal route. And they haven't invented a GPS for that yet. So to echo what's been said, really is collaboration. I think what we're encountering here is, as in healthcare, we're encountering a culture change. A culture change that has a great likelihood of being successful because of you all here. One of the things I've learned is that bureaucracies can be very helpful in changing things, and institutions can be very helpful in driving change. What changes things is the involvement of individuals who have a passion for what they're doing. So our efforts collectively are critically important because we know that there are going to be obstacles in the road. There are going to be places where we may not even see things, eye to eye. When I got involved back starting in, my career substance abuse and mental health were, substance use, pardon me, and mental health were not even spoken of in the same, you know, you had a substance use service and you had a mental health service. And the state had a substance use division and it had a mental health division. And we've seen some progress in those areas. All the services that we provide at Kennedy, we call them dual services. So we've got substance abuse infused into our mental health services and in our substance use services. Pardon me, I am part of the change with substance use. We're injecting our mental health services. And those changes are, you know, they come along at, you know, unfortunately at a pace of their own. Funding streams and regulations are still not, you know, talk about can't get there from here. You know, we're still rounding the edges off of those things. But as a provider in the field for the amount of time that I have, again, I go back to when we have driven meaningful and sustainable change, it's been because of grassroots efforts and the passion of the people in, you know, in the community that are driving us. Our house, you know, being a community-based not-for-profit hospital, like many of our peers across the state, we know that we have an obligation to the community. So, you know, we know this. We read the state of healthcare and the state of hospitals. Some are doing better than others. You know, the fate of charity care at the state level, and how we're going to fund this and how we're going to fund that, and the economics of healthcare. I couldn't have even conversed with you really very well about 30 years ago. But it's now part of our nomenclature constantly is how are we covering our costs and how are we continuing to serve the needs of our community. So that culture change also is part of what's going on, and that we've got to just keep at it. You know, an important piece of this, and Prosecutor Coronado did an incredible job explaining, you know, the role of Narcan. I think that what's happening in the healthcare field, and it hasn't happened as swiftly as it perhaps was needed, is the fact that addiction is a medical disorder. These substances that are being ingested significantly change brain chemistry to the extent where the effects are long-lasting. So it isn't a just say no situation. It isn't a just stop. Now we've got to deal with that neurological, biophysical issue of the ongoing, what we kind of have come to know as addiction. You know, back in the day, we looked at it as something was unfortunate and something that was dirty and a choice. Well, we know now, you know, that that's not the case. I often kind of kid, you know, Otis in Mayberry, when he wandered into Andy's precinct and locked himself in the cell and hung the keys up. We all thought that was funny. Otis had issues. I mean, we got it right. I mean, there was stuff going on that Otis needed help with, for those of you that remember Mayberry and David, myself. But I mean, if you think about it, we can chuckle about it, but I mean, even the perception of that has kind of moved along. One last thing, the community needs assessment that was done back in 2013, without much shock, identified mental health and substance use services as a high priority need. The 5 CEOs from our hospital systems down south, Kennedy and Spirit, Cooper, Lords, and Virtua, got together and put together what has come to be known as the South Jersey Behavioral Health Innovation Collaborative. We've been together for about 1.5 years. And again, what it is it's culture change. It's institutions sitting down and brainstorming and funding a different way of looking at healthcare. What kind of innovations are there for us to move forward? How can we collaborate to make it a different experience and to be better servants to the community? I don't think I'm probably going to speak out of turn when I say some of the service systems in our state are badly broken. And we need, even though politicians are, they make their bones sometimes on placards, we've still got to continue to work with them, because that alignment of funding and regulation still kind of runs counter to the reality on the ground that everybody is facing. So I'm a big quote guy, and one I found recently was from the founder of McDonald's: none of us is as good as all of us. So that's my parting shot. We have to continue to work together, healthcare, law enforcement, the recovery community, the recovery coach community, realtors and funeral homes. What perfect genius is that? we've got to find partners because it's impacting everybody across the spectrum.
Thank you. Thank you. Matt, we on? That's good. Okay, so is that a way to run a panel? We actually have time for questions. And we even stole about 10 minutes from their panel before we went on a break. So, Russ, with the hospital industry, oh man, I can't wait. Detective Kivett, you're in uniform. You have your bulletproof vest? Russ. Okay, so I'm going to have you think about something, and I'll come back to you. You guys are up against it, right? You have people coming in with substance use disorders through Narcan, and then you have people walking into the emergency rooms looking for help. So you guys are up against it, but what's giving you a bad name, and I'll give you an example. I received an email from a healthcare provider, I guess you might want to call it. They said, Kevin, emergency room doctors informed us that City of Angels are sending heroin addicts to our emergency rooms and claiming that they're suicidal. Now I can tell you City of Angels doesn't do that because if you send someone with substance use disorders to the emergency room and they claim suicidal, they'll send them down to the crisis center. Unfortunately, they'll get 2 aspirin and taxi cab fare. So we don't do that. But it went on to say, well, I understand that these addicts have problems. We don't want to block the emergency room to people who really need it. So I happened to run into her at a mental health fair, and one of our people from City of Angels says, the person who wrote that is down at that table. I said, really? So I went down and I said, hi, my name is Kevin Merrick. She said, oh. And I said, did you ever see someone who's been in the street for 2 years on heroin? You think they need services? And then I thought about it, which I often have to do, and I had to kind of step back. So those type of things are what's hurting your industry. So what I want to know is, you guys are up against it. I realize it. Many of the people here, we realize that, Russ. So what is it that you need? You have the law enforcement industry, you have the recovery community here. From your perspective, what do you guys need?
So I'm not sure that I need a bulletproof vest, but maybe a police escort out of the building. So again, I think this is one of those culture situations, and I don't mean to minimize the passion with which, and so as I talk a little wonky, it's not saying, as Kevin noted, we don't want to block the emergency departments because, for people who really need it. So I'll just kind of work my way into it. So the emergency department of today is very different from the emergency department of yesterday, and the demands on that emergency department are very different. So when I talk about culture change and when I talk about having to kind of iron out some of the wrinkles, that's what I mean. So from my perspective, both as a service provider, a hospital person, and somebody that's in touch with what's going on in my community, our service system is not sophisticated enough in the community. So when the community service system breaks down, there's only a few 24-hour, 7-day-a-week, no eject, no reject places you can go. There's law enforcement, and then there's the emergency department. And so in the emergency department, we kind of are we have a round hole, right? And square pegs come in. So we've kind of morphed ourselves to try to adjust and provide those services, but it's a pretty wide berth when you start to realize that not only do we have individuals coming in with addiction issues, we have mental health patients coming in a variety of states of mental health crisis. And that doesn't necessarily even start to address the plethora, I guess is the word, of medical issues that folks are coming into the emergency room. So emergency room visits are up significantly. So it's up to us to work with you to be able to try to determine how are we going to, for us the goal is, and this whole, I wrote down population health, for those of you that have heard about population health, it's more of a wellness perspective. it's how do we provide something for these folks when they need it, where they need it? Because the emergency room is kind of become triage and stabilize and move on. 90% of our admissions come through the emergency room. So yes, there is what we now call throughput issues that we have to address. We have people avoiding our emergency rooms because of the wait and the disturbances created in our emergency rooms. We understand our mission, but it is a huge challenge when it comes down to how we start to be more things to a broadening set of people who are accessing our services. And we know that we have to do better. I mentioned the collaborative. Part of what the collaborative is working on is, again, looking for ways to bring that population health concept to the community, and what can we do more outside of our boundaries? The way the hospital industry is going, we're going to be downsizing. We need to, from the perspective of healthcare, and the way that hospitals are reimbursed, which is another lecture, we know that our survival is, the survival of the healthcare institutions that now exist is going to be medical neighborhoods in the community and how we collaborate with a variety of groups, keeping people well, so that their access to healthcare doesn't have to be in that emergency room.
Prosecutor.
All right, so let me see if I can help you out here. I used to be chairman of, or vice chairman of a hospital, so I kind of have multi-hats. This is my dream, what I think. First off, when a person's presented to the emergency room, they've overdosed, they've got fentanyl, you have to understand with fentanyl, fentanyl's buried into the bones, into the muscles, so what happens is even though you may give them a Narcan or naloxone, it only works for about 90 minutes, and the fentanyl, that's the reason why it's so powerful, is the fact that it has this longer lasting, so once the Narcan and naloxone wears off, the fentanyl then reattaches to the normal receptors and you have an overdose all over again. That's the reason why you need to bring them to the emergency room and need to make sure that the person is not going to continue to reverse and that it's out of their system. Okay, once that has happened, to me, my dream would be, because of all the hip issues and everything else that's going on, that the recovery coaches be employees of the hospital. The recovery coach would come out, talk to them, and then like in Florida and other states, we all think that New Jersey has the best system, but we ought to look out across the country. Florida, they have step-down units. What you would do is then take that person, and actually that person would go to a step-down unit right in the hospital and almost be like a detox. Okay, it would take place. They would hold them anywhere from 24 to 48 hours. At that point in time, a nurse navigator would come in. They would take a determination to find out that they have either both a mental health issue and a substance abuse issue. Then when they would find out that whether they have a family, whether or not what program would be good, what treatment would be good. Maybe it should be that they have to go inpatient, but maybe if it's a mother that's 30 years old that has a child or 2 children, that they can't be able to do that, maybe they'd have to go into a program, either methadone or they'd have to go into a Suboxone or probably into a Vivitrol program, and then there'd be a follow-up that was go through. That's what healthcare should do. Healthcare should be looking at that portion of the problem, help those people, and then follow it up and find out what's going on with them and track them and help them with it. That's what needs to be done. We need to change part of the healthcare community with regard to that. So I'm not saying every hospital has to have it, because there may be a hospital, and I know that Frank Kops is up from Sussex, and maybe up in Sussex that one hospital doesn't have that much overdose problem, so they don't need a step-down unit. I can tell you Community Medical Center and Brick Hospital, where I am, they better have one down there, because we're going to be filling it up pretty quick. And then if they had the recovery coaches and the nurse navigators, they can find out where the beds are available, where what type of treatment that they should get. And just one other thing, so you understand about the Medicaid treatment that goes in. Methadone opens up the neuroreceptors in the brain. Suboxone partially closes the neuroreceptors, and Vivitrol is Narcan. It's an naloxone. It closes off the neuroreceptors. So that's why if you take Vivitrol and they give it for 28 days, it actually bonds the neuroreceptors. That's what the person can be taking heroin, can be taking Oxycontin, whatever, and it's never going to attach because the Vivitrol, the naloxone, has sealed off the neuroreceptor. I'll have to explain to me.
I can tell you that for the afternoon panelists, this panel just set the bar, because we actually have time for a question from the audience.
Can I say something really quick?
We had time for a question from the audience.
Before you go to the question, really quick.
and I can only speak for Kennedy in Washington Township, and I deal with them. We have a doctor, Dr. Baird, who, when I tell you he gets it, the guy gets it. He takes the time to sit and talk to me. He's got a very busy schedule. He's come out to our drug reality forums. He has taken the time himself to write, he writes up blogs for the doctors in his hospital, and then he also actually sends letters out to the doctors and physicians in our area, family physicians. And he does opiate updates, and he gives them information on alternative medicine, rather than giving somebody an opiate or a pain pill, something else they could be doing, other measures they could be taking. He's also taken it a step further, and he also tracks the people that come into the hospital, how many times they come into the hospital, and pretty much like a red flag will go up and say, hey, they've been here 3 times in 1 month. This is the person that we need to sort of turn around and say, okay, what alternative medicine should we be doing with this person or treatment? I didn't want it to sound like anybody was like bashing the hospitals or doctors or anybody, because there are so many good people out there that really care. Dr. Baird made sure that the Recovery Coach program got into the Kennedy Health System, and he stays on top of it. I just saw him on Tuesday, and as I'm walking in and the meeting started, he looks at me and he says, how's our numbers, are things going well? And I said, yes, Michelle's getting her phone calls, they've been helping people, but we could always obviously do better. And he always wants to meet with us. So I didn't want it to be, or anybody thinking that, you know, we don't have a good relationship. You just have to find the person that's going to work with you and that wants to help and do the right thing. And I have that also, I gotta say, like in Spear, I do have a Dr. Boone over there who's really good and wants to work with us and talk with us. So, I mean, we do have those relationships, and it's a part of that collaboration of us all working together.
Yeah, I would be remiss if I didn't notice. I picked on Russ today, but I love him. We only met a short time ago, and we had an immediate bond, and we've talked about getting together in the future and sitting and discussing these issues, and thank you so much for coming up. And I will also be remiss if I didn't mention, I don't know if Sue Borges is here, but we're so fortunate to have Sue Borges from Capital Health here in Mercer County, who actually sits on our task force and gives of her own time, you know, to try to get her hands around this issue. So, Art, we're at 12:30. I'm going to just take the risk.
Can I say one thing, Kev?
I don't think you're.
No. No.
You know I have to, sorry, I have to.
I'm going to give Michelle the microphone and just let you know. She asked me what she should do, and I said, well, go network in your community, learn about
No,
who
he
the
told me to go read a
contacts
book.
are. I told her, go to your municipal alliance meeting, don't say a word, just listen, find out who everybody is and where you're networking, and come back and talk to me. She called me, I said, how'd you do? She goes, I'm vice chair. So that's Michelle. Go ahead, Michelle.
Okay, real quick though, well, I just jotted these down because I don't want to forget. Sean Galton, the prosecutor for Gloucester County, was supposed to be here today, but unfortunately he wasn't able to attend. But he just sends his regards, and he thanks everybody for coming up here, for being here. One of the things with Gloucester County is Sean has mandated it that if you are administered Narcan by a police officer, you have to go to the hospital in the ambulance. You have no choice. You cannot say no. So, like, all these, when they're being administered, they have to go in. Where's my notes? Hold on. This one, what do I do? You never know. Recovery is a process. You know, we have to create a recovery-oriented system of care. It has to be done, and it has to be done everywhere. My son was clean for 2 years, and then he overdosed on my bathroom floor. He didn't have 1 dose. He didn't have 2 doses. He didn't have 3. He didn't have 4. He had 5 doses of Narcan before he came back to life. 3 of them were administered by his fiancée. When she tried to do a finger sweep, his body started to go into a seizure and his jaw clamped down, and like, I'm not a medical professional, somebody explain it to me, but her finger, she couldn't get her finger out of his mouth. She had bite marks on her finger for hours. I mean, hours. And you never know. We have to change the whole system You know, and it's like, I understand where everybody's, you know, barriers and silos, and this one's boss, and that one's boss. You know what, again, let's bring it back down to normal, okay? We have how many people do we have run into that you have no place to take them? The hospital won't keep them, they can't. We can't get a bed right away, what do? Where do we put them? They're homeless, they have nothing. You know what? Any government agency can be leased to a nonprofit organization for $1. Why do we make it so complex? Keep it simplified. There's a building in your county, government building. It can be rented, leased to a nonprofit for $1. You have organizations, you have people. We can make this work. I mean, let's not just tell us what we're doing, but let's talk about the ideas and how we can make the change and put it into effect.
So you're not gonna hear this from me, but I did build in a little bit of time in case we go over. So someone was vocal enough to say they had a question. I heard in the back part, you wanna run down there with that microphone?
Hi, this is for Joe. I love your dream of what you would like to do and see happen with the, when they're admitted to the hospital. Are you pursuing that? Are you trying to implement that somewhere in Brick or in your county somewhere? And if so, how close are you to bringing it to fruition?
Well, I think the ART program, which is being run by RJW Barnabas system, I think what you really find out when we tried to do it, you could see that going between Barnabas system and Meridian, that there was HIPAA issues with regard to that. So for me, I think that eventually they're going to realize that the recovery coaches ought to be embedded in the hospital. And if they were embedded in the hospital, they'd be employees of the hospital. And then I think then what would happen is there'd be more follow-up. And I think if you had what they do in Florida, where they hold them for 24, it's almost like a detox, and then they can figure out exactly what is the best program for that individual. And then also then the state would understand that there aren't enough beds, and there isn't enough, because they can go to the different hospitals and they can see the difficulty that they have putting these people in and placing them and making a better assessment. The way it is, it's it's haphazard, it's all over. And what's the benefit of law enforcement? Because these are the people that are stealing, they're dealing. These are the people, in my numbers in Ocean County, we figure 80% of our crime really comes out of drugs. So if I really make an attempt to really try to do something and really attack that problem, my record is going to go down. My violence and all my 80% of my indictments are drug indictments. So I mean, take a look at that number. I mean, it's huge.
So
we indict 4,000 people a year. So I mean, we're not a small county with regard to that. Our numbers are huge.
So here's the actual numbers that I believe are national. For every dollar invested in education and treatment, saves $7 in law enforcement and $4 in the medical field. So just from a financial standpoint, we benefit by doing these things. Every dollar, $1 invested in education and treatment, saves $11 in the combined medical and law enforcement field. Okay, so
the bottom line is I'm going to be in somebody's face about that. Okay.
So let's hear it for our panel. And for all our morning panels, I've been told as I've walked through that they've been very informative. People are getting a lot of information. So I just want to give you a heads up. We're supposed to be back here, I think, at 1:40. All right? And so there's a 10-minute between the 12:30 and the lunch. It gives you a little bit of time to go to the bathroom and get back here. But if we get everybody back, we can start a little bit earlier. Here's the way, back in where we were doing the networking, there's food there, which is included in the cost of coming today. And
It's free.
And our keynote speaker, Phil Valentine, will be going on during lunch. We've set aside about 45 minutes, Phil, for you?
Whatever you need.
Whatever you need. So what we're going to do is ask you, to get across, get your food, and probably 15, 20 minutes in, we're going to ask Phil to come up on stage and start. So, we're going to allow you to eat through Phil talking. He doesn't mind that. And I think you'll really enjoy his thoughts. And 1:30, so about 1:30 technically, we're supposed to start heading back here. So the panel is New Jersey